Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reign of Troy Radio, episode 475, coming to you on Monday, February 20th. It is President's Day. And of course, we're going to talk about all about the president, Reggie Bush. Actually, we're not, but we should. That would be a great episode topic that we completely dropped the ball on. No, we're going to talk about Big Ten rivalries for the Trojans, some potential college football rule changes, and so much more here on this episode. As always, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, right here on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, TuneIn, Overcast. As always, you can email us, reignoftroy@fansire.com. I'm your host, Mario Castillo, journalist, my co-host here in the Reign of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Deratola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back on a holiday week. A couple of weeks until spring camp starts. Things are starting to heat up. We've got our membership now live over on YouTube, which we're super excited about. You can join us on YouTube. You get extra content, at least one thing a month during the off season, including this week. We're going to post our first members only video. We're super pumped about that. So join us over on the YouTube. You can support the show for 99 cents and you get some special badges and emojis in the chat. Or for $4.99, you can join our super secret, not really super secretive, but
super exclusive.
Super exclusive. There you go. Members only Discord channel, along with members only content about once a month in the off season. But let's be real, if there's breaking news, probably going to hop on and say something in the middle of the week. And then once we get to the regular season, it's going to be, something new every week over there on the membership side. So you can join us for $4.99 and join the Rot Squad, which is the name of what we're calling our membership. So come join us over on YouTube, help support the channel, and so much more. Alicia, I am super excited to get going on an episode like this because we get to talk about potential things like the future with the Big Ten.
Yeah, which is coming up very quickly, and it's weird to think that this is the last season of Pac-12 football that USC will take part in. And I don't think my brain has really caught up to that fact yet, and I'm curious when my brain will catch up to that fact. I mean, I guess the more that we talk about the Big Ten potential scheduling situation, once all of that kind of stuff gets finalized, maybe it'll be real. But we were doing some prep for the episode today, and I'm sort of looking at it thinking to myself, like, USC is going to be in a conference with Purdue next year.
Yeah, it's still wild to me to think about. Like, it doesn't necessarily seem real yet. I don't know when it's going to. I guess when SC starts playing with Purdue and Indiana and Illinois on a weekly basis, when SC has to go play in the snow potentially. Who knows? I don't know. We were gonna put this at the end, but I just kind of want to get to it right off. Let's just go to an email we got from John in Oakland. It says, "Hello, Alicia and Michael. I've seen reports that the Big Ten once SC and UCLA join next year may go to a 3-6-6 format for scheduling conference games. Each team plays 3 teams every season as rivalry games, protected rivalry games, and the other 12 teams are set into blocks of 6 and rotated over a 4-year span, 6 on, 6 off, 6 on, 6 off. Given UCLA will be one of USC's 3 permanent rivals, who would your other 2 Big Ten rivals for USC be and why? Mine are Northwestern and Michigan State. Northwestern is another private school university sort of replacing Stanford, and if scheduled to alternate road home games with Notre Dame, it would give USC an annual trip to Chicago. Michigan State would set up a fun mascot war, Spartans versus Trojans. What are your thoughts, John in Oakland? I saw this email this past week, and I was super pumped. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm curious your thoughts, Elisa.
Ooh, okay, my thoughts are that I went in and sort of tried to set up. I looked at some of the sort of parameters around setting up these rivalries, and I looked at it and sort of tried to put some thought behind it, and then realized, like, this is going to be very fascinating to see what the Big Ten ultimately decides here, because there are a lot of teams that are going to have a say in this, and it's hard to predict what what strategy those teams are going to take in terms of deciding these protected rivals. Because there's a really easy answer to this. It's USC, protected rivals, UCLA, Ohio State, and Michigan. And then you have mega blockbuster matchups every single year in the Big Ten, and you're feeling good about that and all that kind of stuff. But then I sort of sat back and thought, well, from a USC perspective, I don't know that I would sign up for that, because now you're locked in every single year playing the marquee teams in the Big Ten. Um, that's a murderer's row to sign up for, to do every single year. And if you're Ohio State, you're sort of looking at it from the same perspective. I went in and looked. So Ohio State's protected rival is Michigan, obviously. And then there's a really strong argument to have Ohio State be blocked in with Penn State, because of how good that matchup has been in terms of TV dollars and TV eyeballs. So you go Penn State for Ohio State, and then what? You throw USC in there, and then Ohio State's really going to sit there and say, yeah, we're going to sign up to play Michigan, Penn State, and USC every year when we're trying to get into the college football playoff. You do the same thing with Michigan. When if you're Michigan and you're saying, okay, I have a rivalry game with Ohio State and Michigan State every year, and the third one is going to be USC. Like, I don't know if those schools are going to be okay with that. Now, the dollars are huge. I get it. And I think dollars are usually the thing that governs these things. So maybe it is as simple as what matchups will get the most eyeballs and dollars every year. But I think there will be pushback from programs like Ohio State, like Michigan, who maybe don't want to stack their schedule in that way. And I think there's a very good argument for that. Part of that sort of thinking is why I think John in Oakland is on the right track, in that if you get matched up with Northwestern and Michigan State, you're not playing teams that are in and out every year going to be the most well-funded and the most competitive. But you have other reasons behind it. Like, I immediately looked at Northwestern and thought, if USC plays Northwestern and they alternate Notre Dame and Northwestern with the road game, you get a yearly trip to Chicago. That's great. Like, I think that's, for USC fans, that's legit. There are other sort of schools that you could look at, and do you do Rutgers and sort of do a New York feel? Like, do you do some of these other programs with that sort of thing in mind? I think there's a lot of different scenarios that you can make a good argument for. When I went in and sort of did mine, I kind of settled in on Nebraska and Wisconsin make a lot of sense to me. Penn State makes a lot of sense to me. But the way that I sort of figured it is, if I'm the Big Ten, I take Nebraska and Penn State and I match them each with USC and UCLA, one each. So I personally went with Penn State taking UCLA, and I went with Nebraska taking USC, because those are the newer entrants to the Big Ten that have name recognition, that could really forge a really strong bond in terms of the sort of fan bases and rivalry sort of things that make a lot of sense. And then I was sort of thinking, yeah, you could do Wisconsin, because if you were going to keep the divisions in place, and you were looking at like the Big Ten East, or the Big Ten West, whatever you want to call it, USC and Wisconsin look like they would have been sort of the powers over there anyways. And Wisconsin's another program with really good sort of storied history that you could play off of each other, without it being every year you're going to have to beat the Buckeyes in order to do anything in the conference. So that was sort of the way that I was looking at it. I love the Northwestern Michigan State deal. I think you could just as easily make the argument for Nebraska and Wisconsin. You could easily make an argument for Penn State and Wisconsin, or Nebraska and Penn State. You could, I was having a conversation with you. If I'm USC, I'm signing up for Rutgers and Maryland or something like that, just on the pure sense of, I want my locked in rivals to be easy wins every year as much as possible. So like you can even make the argument for that with no other good reason behind making those matchups. It really is a free for all, and I don't know how. You know, the way that you'd have to solve this almost is like by doing a model UN where you have every one of us is like assigned a school that we are doing their interests and then working out like who would you all want to play, and
Right.
like write down on a sheet of paper like what are your top 5 choices and then pair them up that way, which may be what they end up doing in the Big Ten. I can't predict what is Maryland's rooting interest in all of this. Like what does Maryland have to say about who that they get rivaled up with?
Yeah, I think the difficult thing here is you can't have everyone's needs met, because we think of these as rivalries. But I think the important thing is not to think of them as rivalries. Think of them as games that will happen every year,
Yeah.
because some of these are if you're a school like Michigan and you have the Ohio State rivalry, which has to be protected, and you have the Michigan State in-state rivalry that you would assume has to be protected, and you have multiple trophy games like Little Brown Jug, Old Oaken Bucket, and all those kind of things, right? That you want protected as well. It means that the schools that don't have those things are going to have games to sort of counteract that. And SC, UCLA, Maryland, Rutgers, and Penn State, the 5 schools that have, along with Nebraska, that have 6 schools that have come in the last 30 years, dating back to 91 when Penn State joined the conference, really kind of have to make up for those numbers, right? And well, I think Penn State is a interesting candidate here because they joined the conference after being independent for so long, right? And they've sort of created a rivalry with Ohio State. They've created a rivalry with Michigan State. They play for with the land grant trophy because they're both land grant universities, and they have those 2 rivalries, right? But I think in a perfect world, you'd like to see them have a rivalry with Rutgers and Maryland because of geography, right? And because they're like-minded in terms. I mean, not necessarily like-minded, but they're similar in how they join the conference late, etc. Right? But again, you only get 3 of those games, and I think it's difficult to put all this together. Like, we started to write down who the teams would be that kind of match up with everybody. And while I think it's easy to say that Michigan should play Ohio State, Michigan State, and Minnesota, because those are historic rivalries, I don't know what you do with a lot of the other teams. In the chat, Ito says 3 rivalries being UCLA, Iowa, and Nebraska. Iowa because they're 2 completely different cultures that would sell the rivalry, and Nebraska because the distance isn't so bad. They're both blue bloods. But again, I got to go back to you have to consider the other teams and what they're going to want as well, right? Like,
Well,
and what
Iowa is already stricken off the board for USC because they have 3 protected rivalries in the Big Ten already.
Right. Yeah. And so I think it makes it, super difficult. And those rivalries being, the rivalries with Wisconsin and with Nebraska, right?
And Minnesota.
Yeah. And so I think it makes it a little bit difficult. John's idea, I think, is probably right. And well, the rationale, I think, makes a lot of sense. You have the like-minded, secular private schools, SC and Northwestern, in major cities. I think that makes a lot of sense. Plus, you get to the Chicago alumni group for SC is pretty strong, and you strengthen that with an annual game in Chicago. Mind you, we're going to be in Chicago a lot when you consider that if SC goes to play Illinois, where are you going to fly into?
Yeah.
You're flying into O'Hare Midway. If SC goes to play Purdue, where are you flying into? O'Hare Midway. Like all these schools, you're going to be Chicago adjacent anyways. But on top of that, I think that Northwestern is one of the schools where I think that it's sort of difficult for them to fill out the 3 as well. And that's kind of the key for SC and UCLA find those schools who it's going to be difficult for them to fill out the three. So I think the candidates end up being Northwestern, Michigan State as a like outside possibility. Um, Penn State is extreme outside possibility again, but to me, this is going to be Northwestern, Nebraska, Rutgers, or Maryland. Those I think are realistically the teams that SC could get paired up with, and UCLA. Like SC and UCLA sort of right here in the same boat because, you know, they don't have the connections to these schools either. And
Yeah,
you know, if you talk to an SC fan, who's the biggest rival in the Big Ten, everyone's going to say Ohio State and Michigan. But you know, to your point earlier, I don't think the Big Ten wants all the blue bloods to play each other in the regular season. You want those teams to, you know, play in the conference championship game at the end.
Yeah.
And then you also want them to be in the playoff. You know, in the chat, Ito says with a 12-team playoff facing Ohio State and Michigan every year won't be as bad if we lose a game to them yearly since there's more spots in the playoff. But okay, consider that you're the conference. Okay, if SC and Ohio State play every year, and Ohio State also has to play, you know, Penn State and Michigan as well, then if they play fewer, then you can potentially get 2 or 3 of those teams in rather than just one, et cetera. Like,
well, if Ohio
it's about
State
maximizing the opportunities for revenue,
yeah,
right?
if Ohio State and USC play each other every year, then they can knock each other out of the playoff every year in the sense that like you have a situation where, you know, Michigan and Ohio State and USC are all sort of giving each other losses that they wouldn't otherwise give each other. You don't want that. Even with the 12-team playoff, because with a 12-team playoff, now your deal is we want to get 3 teams in.
Right. Yeah.
And
exactly.
or 4 teams even. And so handing one of your 4 best teams an extra loss every year. This was the argument against the 9-team conference schedule in the Pac-12. Everyone, half of the conference loses an extra game every year, and you know there's certain things that you can't necessarily control about like who's going to win and who's going to lose, but you certainly want your best potential teams, the ones that are going to invest the most in football and care the most about winning in football. You do want to give them the leg up. Like that's just the way that college football works. So again, there's going to be a push and pull between the pure money talk about a yearly Ohio State USC matchup and the competitive, like, okay, you're going to then make it harder for each of those teams to get to the playoff every year sort of conversation. And yeah, maybe I think those conversations will be had. And I think it's entirely possible that the Big 10 agrees with Ito on this in the sense of like, but with 12 teams, it doesn't matter. We want that marquee matchup every year.
Yeah.
I think it's entirely possible. But I think it's just as possible that Ohio State sits there and go like, nah.
Well, I think the flip
we're going
side
to play USC every 4 years anyways. So it's not like you're never going to see.
But it's not every 4 years; it's every other year.
It's every other. Yeah,
because that's the other thing that
you play home and away within a 4-year span every team.
Which is why I think that we need to think about these as these are just games that will happen every year versus just calling them protected rivalries. Because for some teams, they are protected rivalries, yes. But for SC and UCLA who don't have that connection to say Purdue, then it might just be that you play Purdue every year instead of every other year. But like that doesn't necessarily make it a rivalry. It's just for logistical reasons because somebody had to play Purdue every year.
You're just more likely to form a rivalry with a team that you're playing every year. But you're right. That doesn't mean that you can't have rivalries outside of these.
Well, look at the Pac-12 now.
In. Yeah, right? It's not like USC and Oregon stopped being rivals because they were on different sides of the Pac-12.
But these things exist in the Pac-12. Like right now, as it stands,
it's a 3-team,
SC and Cal. Sorry, SC and UCLA play Stanford and Cal every year. That was protected.
Yeah.
But in order to make that happen, Oregon and Arizona have to play every year.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's like every team in the North and South have protected,
and they've sort of formed a weird competitive rivalry too. Like these things just sort of form. But I think you are on the right track in the sense of you grab the teams that you're not going to be disrupting any historic rivals,
Yes.
and you throw them together with USC and UCLA, and you shake it up, and you see which way it falls. Like, I think that's the because I was looking at The Athletic had a thing about how this might all shake out, and they had a list of like the rivalries that have been played the most, like the most games.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling you, like, it's funny because Penn State and Ohio State have one of the better rivalries in the Big Ten right now, but they've played the fewest number of times.
Yeah, because Penn State was independent until 91.
Yeah. So, like, it doesn't always work that way in terms of just pure longevity, but you're going to want to maintain some of those longer lived rivalries and take some of the this is sort of why I settled on, Nebraska makes a lot of sense. Penn State makes a lot of sense.
Yes. I think if it wasn't, here's a question for you. If it did not affect anybody else, SC gets their first 3 selections, full stop, who are you picking? Like, nobody else matters. You get full power. Who are those 3 teams you're picking?
Am I USC's athletic director, or am I a USC fan when I'm making this choice?
I don't know. You can go either way.
Because if I'm the athletic director whose job is to make sure that my program is as successful as possible in terms of scheduling, I pick up Rutgers and Maryland like there's no tomorrow. Or Rutgers and Northwest. Actually, it's probably Northwestern and Rutgers. Just out of straight, they're not going to be heavily invested in football.
Mm-hmm.
So the chances of them being a juggernaut at any point during our rivalry are lower. And there is spectator travel consideration with Northwestern and Chicago, and Rutgers and New York. So
Philly,
those are the first 2. If I'm a USC fan picking, give me Ohio State and Michigan. And like Ida says, like they say they're being selfish by wanting marquee matchups yeah, I'm with you. Like, yes, I agree. I think from a fan perspective, those are the ones you want. From a purely like, we get to watch those games every year. But from a pragmatic perspective, you take the teams that don't care about football as much, because then you don't have to worry about them as much.
Yeah, I think from a football perspective, in terms of like a football tradition perspective, I think you want Ohio State or Michigan, and you probably want Nebraska as the other one, because Nebraska, we can say it's close. I mean, the other thing is, what is like 1,600 miles versus 2,200 miles or whatever it is, right? Like, I don't think we're an hour of flight time and doesn't completely change everything.
When you've been on a plane for a few hours, though, another hour does feel like a lot.
Sure. So. I mean, the other thing is, what's the difference between SC and or LA and Lincoln versus LA and Pullman? Not completely different.
Yeah.
But
Nebraska's a really good case study too, of there's sort of a sweet spot between the 2 sides that I was getting at there, where you get a program with inherent disadvantages, a storied program with inherent disadvantages on the recruiting trail,
mm-hmm.
and in NIL spaces. And those are the ones you attach yourself to. You attach yourself to the Nebraskas and the Wisconsins of the world, because while they care about football, while they might invest a lot, they will always be at an inherent recruiting and NIL disadvantage to recruiting to Lincoln and to recruiting to...
if you're Nebraska, you are doing everything you possibly can
to get USC,
SC, UCLA, trips, and then like keep your like Iowa or Nebraska or Wisconsin rivalry.
What was their recruiting pitch a few years ago? Calibraska or something like that?
Yes, because of Adante Williams. Yeah. But no, I'm saying, like, don't you want to do the Notre Dame thing where Notre Dame plays SC and Stanford?
That's fair.
And so that way they can end every season in California. It's a huge rivalry thing. I mean, a recruiting thing for them, right?
So Nebraska would get Iowa, USC, and UCLA.
Ideally, if you're Nebraska, I think that's what you want, because then you can, because they no longer go to Texas anymore. And that used to be the hallmark of their recruiting efforts, was being able to recruit Texas. They can't do that, and that's part of the reason why it's kind of, really hurt them to go to the Big Ten. They had these hopes and dreams of going to the Big Ten, and they realized, oh shoot, we can't recruit Texas the same way. And then on top of that, they've made bad coaching decisions, or they've made coaching decisions that just haven't panned out. Like Frost was one that just didn't pan out, right? But so I don't know. I think it's gonna
Yeah.
be interesting to see how everything comes together with the scheduling. Let us know. Send us an email, randomtroy@fanside.com, or we can continue this discussion later on, or hit us up over on Discord if you are in the Rot Squad as well. Lisa, a lot of stuff to still get to on this episode, including some news. Let's go run down the news a little bit. Let's start with Eric Gentry. Has had surgery on his ankle and will miss spring camp, but should be ready come the fall.
Yeah, I think it goes to show the situation with Eric Gentry and the defense and the situation and just linebacker play in general.
Mm-hmm.
That even though Eric Gentry was back on the field, clearly he was not at 100%. We knew this, but it was probably worse than we even thought in terms of the ankle. If he had to come out of the season, have a month of relative rest on that ankle, and still get to a point where they needed to surgically repair it before spring camp. So number one, it's good that it's getting taken care of in the spring, and he gets to sort of go through that rehab and be ready to go for fall camp. But number two, it is a bummer because he is still a young player that needs time in the system and all of those learning reps. Losing those is unfortunate. It's a huge, massive, major opportunity for someone like Tackett Curtis, because Tackett Curtis was already coming in with this sort of mystique around him that he could come in and start immediately for USC, just based on his sort of feel for the game and his ferocity on the football field. Him getting to come in and step into extra reps, presumably during spring camp. We think Mason Cobb will be a plug and play starter, but the person next to him, we would have assumed it would have been Eric Gentry. Tackett Curtis, it's hard to think of who among the rest of the inside linebackers is going to get in the way of him seeing a lot of first team reps in spring. So this could be a huge situation just for the competition that comes around in fall camp with Tackett Curtis having a spring under his belt that Eric Gentry didn't get to have.
Yeah, as much as you want to see Eric Gentry be able to take the next step and continue to develop and all that, especially when there's thoughts that he could maybe move positions or whatnot, and really see what he can develop into. I like this opportunity for Tackett Curtis. What Mason Cobb can do at linebacker, and see all those different components with the transfer portal and the incoming guys, see what you can get out of it. At the same time, SC, obviously you want Gentry to be one of your best players, but I think we saw last year SC kind of put the hope in things will be better once Eric Gentry comes back.
Obviously not.
It was not the case, which means that the problems on defense are way bigger than Eric Gentry. So as much as this is a key injury, there's still plenty of places to improve that SC can still find a lot of areas to improve over on defense. One of the areas that SC is looking to improve off the fields is with NIL stuff, and there's now a new USC NIL collective launched by a certain guy named Keyshawn Johnson. You ever heard of him?
May have come up once or twice.
How about Alex Holmes? Heard of that guy?
Maybe once or twice.
Yeah. Keyshawn and Alex Holmes, obviously USC football alums, but they've teamed up with a bunch of investors, including John Terzian, Dave Stromberg, Avi Chesed, and Michael Hahn. Various backgrounds from hospitality to management to investors and entrepreneurs. Caleb Williams is also partnering with them, and USC is on board, unlike previously with the Student Body Rights collective that started and then stopped when the leader passed away.
Yeah, it's the difference in the sort of approach, or in USC's approach to these two different NIL collectives is really interesting because they seemed very just like no 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 with student body right, which by the way, much better name. Still haven't figured out why the Tommy group Tommy is all caps. Maybe we'll get an explanation on at some point on that. Student body right, better name, but it seems that the Tommy group has a better approach in terms of playing.
You don't know what it
nice,
stands for? The one money
making YOLOers.
youngsters.
Youngsters.
There you go.
The one money making youngsters. Yeah.
The only money making youngsters.
The only money making youngsters.
Yeah.
There we go. I
Yeah.
like it. I like it. But it looks like their sort of approach to this thing, it seems a lot more smoother. I think Lincoln Riley and like a bunch of people from USC were at their like launch party and stuff like that. So clearly the university is behind this one, even though it's not university run like Boulevard has been. So this
Boulevard no more, by the way.
Which yeah, apparently it's like a name change or something, or sort of a rebrand on Boulevard. So we'll see what they come up with on that front. But
at the end of the road for that one, right?
The end of the road for that one, yeah. Either way, USC having an alumni-driven NIL collective is a good thing, and anyone who wants to help fund USC's NIL dealings in a way that's not going to get the NCAA on USC's back is something to absolutely welcome. And just you want to see USC continue to be competitive in the NIL space. So this is only a good thing, so long as they stay within the boundaries of whatever it is that the NCAA has decided you can and cannot do with regard to NIL. I don't know that we all know that at this point. So it's sort of everybody's been walking on eggshells, but it's nice to see that that this group is coming together. And these are some big names. I mean, when Caleb Williams was getting recruited to USC out of the transfer portal, you guys might recognize John Terzian's name. He's the sort of co-founder of the H Wood group, the like Bootsy, what's it called? He's got a bunch of nightclubs and stuff, and one of that they have a space in SoFi Stadium. They have like one of the clubs down on field level is basically owned by this guy and run by this guy. And so like when Caleb Williams was in Los Angeles getting sort of wined and dined to see if he would come to USC, like these were the names that were being talked about. H Wood and all of that kind of stuff is like the power brokers that were making sure that Caleb Williams was going to come to USC. So these are the guys you got to have working to make sure that that people are being funded.
Yeah, absolutely. Boulevard. I like Tommy as a name much better than Student Body Right or Boulevard, like we talked about before. By the way, Boulevard and Avenue. You know the difference between the two?
Is it like an orientation, like east west, north south kind of situation?
A lot. There is a lot of that in like the LA region, yes, but it's not a hard and fast rule. But that's very minimal. But no, the important thing, like in France, Boulevard has a median and an avenue has trees on the side.
Oh, okay.
More you know. Anyways, Deuce Robinson. We got a little bit of an update with Deuce Robinson, the 5-star tight end out of Pinnacle High in Phoenix. The pretty much the only guy the only major commit that hasn't, or recruit that hasn't signed since signing day began the signing window. He has had his crystal ball flipped from Blair Angulo of 24/7 Sports from Georgia, the two-time defending national champion, to USC.
Yeah, pretty good. USC has been working to try and get him. He's a really, really outstanding tight end that obviously major programs are going after. Everyone wants him. The big question remains, when will he sign? When will he make a decision about where he's going? And what will it look like when he decides he is going to join a college football program? Because apparently the MLB draft might be calling, and MLB teams are looking at him. So this could get complicated. So the saga will continue, but a crystal ball in USC's favor is always very, very good at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone knows that if you follow USC, any amounts, that people always clamor for tight ends, you especially.
I
So
do love some tight
getting a
ends.
big 5-star would be huge for
Although I
SC.
was
So
I was just having a conversation with my dad who was asking about like, are we gonna see tight ends used more? And I'm like, listen, I love tight ends. I really do. Like few things make me happier than seeing a tight end catch a pass up the seam. But also, like USC averaged 40 plus points a game,
yeah,
and they have a million wide receivers who are all very good. Like, I know that everyone wants the tight end to be used, but I don't think it's a storyline that I don't know that I'm going into this season thinking, yeah, the thing that USC really needs to do is start using tight ends more. It's like
yeah.
tight ends need to sort of the tight ends that USC has on the roster need to sort of demand to be used.
Well, like I told your dad, like the thing with SC right now, the way everything is, if you have a tight end, a really good tight end, I think he will absolutely be used in the passing game. It will just be in lieu of a slot receiver.
Yes.
And the slot receivers exist sort of in lieu of the tight ends. It's the same role. We saw it 3-4 years ago with Drake London when he started under Graham Harrell, right, as a true freshman. We talked about it then. He sort of plays like a tight end, like a split wide tight end, and I think that's pretty much what you're going to see out of someone who ends up being a tight end, with the exception of they're going to line up as an H back as well
Yeah.
to block from on occasion.
24/7 Sports has a comparison for Deuce Robinson to Darren Waller of the Oakland Raiders. Well, of the Las Vegas, they say Oakland Raiders. Weird. Of the Vegas Raiders. Uh, if he lives up to that comparison, yes,
Mm-hmm.
he will absolutely be involved in USC's offense under Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, when you've got guys like USC has, where they already have enough trouble spreading the wealth around the wide receiver room to make everybody happy, like, at a certain point, you can't complain about the tight ends.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's finish the news here by talking about some new rule changes for college football. Everyone's favorite, certainly my favorite, off-season talking point. The rule proposals this time designed to speed up games because people don't like how long games are.
People
People
don't
want
like
less
football,
football for some
apparently.
reason.
Yeah.
Yes. The rule changes prohibit consecutive timeouts, i.e., no more icing with multiple timeouts. So you can't call multiple timeouts on the same play. I think that's fair.
That's fair.
No problem here. If you
Yep.
save one timeout for your icing, you don't need to do it twice.
Mm-hmm.
No more untimed downs before the end of the first or third quarter. If it ends on a defensive penalty, the new down just gets played in the next quarter.
Seems
Uh,
seems fair.
that's fine
Yeah.
because
I don't know how often
how
that
often is that
happens.
going to be in effect?
That's my thing about that
That's
particular
minimal.
one. Like, okay, I'm not opposed, but also, does there need to be a rule change for the thing that happens maybe a handful of times a season across all of the games?
Right.
Okay, change the rule. That's fine.
Yeah,
No,
don't care.
save a few seconds. That's fine. Whatever.
All right. Keep the clock running after the first down, except inside the 2 minutes before the half. So, in other words, the sanctity of college football will remain for the last 2 minutes of the half, with the clock stopping on first downs. This could eliminate 7 to 9 plays per game, it's expected.
Yeah.
Mind you, a lot of these things come with the mindset of reducing time for the speed of games, but also there is some suggestions of doing this to improve player safety, viewer plays, which, let me just say, I think that is an absolute meat shield for these things.
I love the player safety element of we're going to
If they
reduce the
actually
number
cared
of
about
plays.
player safety, they'd
They
do other
wouldn't.
things.
If they cared about player safety, they wouldn't have 15 games a year potentially for teams. Like,
Yeah,
if you're so concerned about player safety, then don't
you'd
play
have
12,
2 bye
12
weeks built in
Yes,
automatically.
you would have it mandated that you can't play more than 5 games in a row without a break.
Yes. Maction in the middle of the week couldn't happen. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? There would be things.
You have to have 7 you have to have 6 you have to have a full 6 days of rest before any games are played. Like,
exactly.
Again, it's
taking 7 plays away.
Yeah.
That's your player safety help? Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Sure. No, you just want more time to sell ads.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here. Okay, last one is keep the clock running after an incomplete pass once the ball is spotted for play. This could eliminate 15 plus plays per game. Get the hell out of here with this.
So I
So I assume this means not in the final 2 minutes also?
I didn't see anything
Because if
specific
so,
to that.
then what happens to a spike ball?
Yeah, the final 2 minutes thing would be it's my understanding that we have laid these out in the order in which they are most likely to be approved. So the first 2 are so simple, no one has anything against them, whatever, they're probably just going to get approved. The third one is sort of uncertain. The fourth one I don't think is going to get passed, because when you look at it, you just go like, that's going to change the entire sort of the entire strategic way of playing a football game. I
don't know that it would change everything. It will just like it kills clock to kill clock. And it's like, okay, so you just want less football.
Yes.
Don't we all like football? We like watching football. Why do we want less of it?
Well, see,
I will never understand this argument that there's too much of the game that we like. Like,
what doesn't make sense? What doesn't make sense to me is it's always college football is too long compared to the NFL. But then you look at like some of the numbers.
I can't stand NFL games.
NFL games,
because they run like 4 plays in the whole game.
No, but NFL games on average are 3 hours and 10 minutes long.
Yes.
On average, FBS games are 3 hours and 21 minutes long.
Yes.
That's an average of 11 extra minutes. And college football has a halftime
of more plays.
Has a halftime
longer
that's
halftime.
Almost twice as long.
Yes.
So like, if you want to lose those 10 minutes in average game time, then go to the NFL 12-minute halftime. But no one does. You're not going to do that because you want the halftime shows and all this kind of stuff, whatever.
Right.
But like, I don't understand why. And then there's like the numbers for there's 180 plays averaged in FBS games with 155 in NFL games.
Yeah, and that's what's wrong with the NFL. There's too few plays.
But I don't think that has a lot to do with the amount of time that a game is played in.
No.
I think mostly that has to do with in college, up-tempo offenses are just more common. People tend to run up-tempo. That's why that accounts
and like you said, there's 8 minutes built in at halftime there. There's also the 2-minute warning. So if you want to include another 8 minutes, how much does that get milked? We're almost at like 12, 15 minutes that are the difference right there. Like I don't know.
I keep going back to whatever, change whatever rules if you want to reduce time, but but also I happen to like college football and I don't care how long a game takes if it's entertainment. Now, if you wanted to do some sort of mercy rule timing situation where like if one team is up by more than 20 points, then you go with a running clock or something like that.
Yes.
By all means, do it. I don't care. But like if a game is competitive, I don't want fewer plays manufactured in because someone wrote down in a rule book at some point that we need less of this good thing.
Right. If it's a 4-possession game, then the running clock is like automatic.
Yeah,
something
whatever,
like that.
something like that.
Yeah,
and if games are going too long in general, like do like what F1 does and put a stop clock on. Put But you have to finish this game within 4
No,
hours. Like,
no,
I don't know.
that's the worst suggestion of all time. It kills me that that even exists.
I just
The worst part
it
of
just
Formula
it
One,
just
hands
feels like
down.
they're trying to fix things that who are these people who are complaining about game length? I don't know. I
It's
guess
the
it's
TV
when you have
partners.
8
The
o'clock
TV partners are the
starts.
only thing that makes sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the constant complaint we hear is that if you have like a 7:30 PM or an 8 o'clock start, and then the game goes till midnight, whatever. Like, okay,
And
whatever. But
my constant argument will be there's how many SC home games are there going to be? 6 or 7?
yeah,
There's 6 or 7 Saturdays.
in the entire year,
You can make an
maybe.
extra 20 minutes in your 6 or 7 Saturdays. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And that's assuming that all 6 or 7 of USC's home games start at closer to 8 o'clock, which
Right.
the vast majority of them do not. So I don't know. It's maybe we're just not old and grumpy enough. Like maybe in 10 years
I
or
mean,
20 years we'll be the ones
people complain
complaining.
about
But
this with baseball all the time,
yeah.
and I still go back to so you want less baseball.
Yeah.
Mind you, I am. You want to know my craziest hot baseball take? Allow the mercy rule to exist.
Yeah. Well, if you don't want position play,
Teams are already
if a
giving
manager
up.
is choosing to
Yes.
put the position player on the mound,
Then allow them
then
to
just forfeit. You're fine.
allow them to
Yes, allow them to
call
just
it
end the
and
game,
concede.
whatever.
Yes.
Kenny in the chat says the only times I hear the complaint are when refs slow the game to a snail's pace. What will be
Yes.
done about that? Nothing. Yes,
Add a timer for
the
replay.
biggest complaint, not just replay, the biggest complaint I have had about the length of a football game ever in my life was the third quarter between USC and Arizona that one year when they threw
Yes.
15 or 16
Now,
flags in one
okay.
quarter. Like,
Here's the other thing. If you added a timer for replay, and does the NFL have a timer for replay? I want to say that when it first started, at least it did.
they started doing a thing called like expedited replay that is through
Because so here's the thing. If they did a timer for replay and you could only like the replay could only be 60 seconds or less,
yeah.
and they started just keeping things standing rather than actually fixing the problem because they couldn't see enough angles in the 60 seconds, people would bitch about that.
Yeah.
Like you can't solve the thing, right? At some points we can't figure this out. Although at the same time, if you can't tell if it's a catch in 60 seconds or not,
then
just
play
go with
stands.
what's on the field.
There were clips of XFL action started this weekend, and they have a transparent replay booth where they literally have like Dean Blandino in the replay booth mic'd up explaining what's going on. And he's saying like pull up that angle, pull up that, I can't tell, so that's got to stand. And it seemed like it was going kind of quick. If you had to just have a ref who was like mic'd up, and maybe not, you wouldn't do the mic'd up thing, but like if you just had a replay hub or whatever, and they just
wait, you mean like what they do in hockey where it goes to Toronto to solve?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that,
because the downside of that is what happens if there's 3 other games that are
all going to
yes.
Yeah, but with conferences, you sort of have it be by the conference.
It's still, if you have 4 games happening at the same time and 2 of them are in reviews,
either
suddenly
way,
things back up.
If the parameters were you have a replay official who's in their thing and they are looking at it and they see everything, you either see it or you don't.
Right.
You either have the angles or you don't.
Yeah. Either way, I agree that Kenny's right. Like the games take a long time because of things like replays and because there is the 20-minute halftime. Like those factor in a lot more than stopping the clock after incomplete passes. That's not what we need to be worried about. Rapid fire, because we're trying to limit this one to a quick, hasty 1 hour here because we've got real life plans, real fun stuff. Kenny says Ohio State canceled their upcoming series with Washington. How likely do you think it is that the LSU SC game gets canceled in 2024?
I mean, that's not something I had considered. I think it's low. I think USC is not Washington in terms of sort of like brand matchups.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think that USC would be the one doing the canceling there, and I can't imagine USC doing the canceling there.
I don't think you cancel a one-off money game.
Yeah.
I think you cancel a home and home series.
Yeah.
So I think those are two different things. Plus, I think if you're Ohio State and you wanted to have those West Coast trips for recruiting purposes, and suddenly now FC and UCLA are on the docket, I think it gives you can convince yourself that you can cancel that game.
Yeah.
And get out of it that way. Does suck for Washington. It's like 3 or 4 teams have backed out. I think Michigan canceled their series, right? Or the COVID year canceled one of them.
One
like
series, yeah.
They had like 3 different, big opponents, and the only one to actually come in the last 5 years is Michigan State. So big bummer up there in Montlake. Ito says, how does Shane Lee fit into this puzzle with Cobb and Tackett battling out for the starting spots this spring and fall? Inside linebacker.
I think Gentry being injured also really benefits Shane Lee in the sense that like he can lock down a starting role.
Yeah.
Prove, hey guys, I'm healthy now. I'm ready to go. I can handle this and be the guy there next to Mason Cobb. It really just will. It just sort of it gives everyone who's there in the spring who has the potential to hold a starting job has the advantage now over Gentry. Does that mean that Gentry won't be able to fight back in fall? No, of course not. But they will definitely be involved. I feel bad because I sort of overlooked Shane Lee. I wasn't expecting him to be back. I was sort of thinking he would be a 1-year deal. So it's a little bit weird to sort of factor him into this season. I need to get out of that habit of sort of forgetting that he's there because he has been complimented heavily for his leadership in the locker room. What we saw from him over the fall.
He also had missed like 2 or 3 seasons, right? So
he yes, and also he played with an injury for most of the season, and also maybe he is a player who will benefit from having better players around him too, because he was not great in pass coverage, but he was by
good
far
at
USC's best run defender. So yeah, he was good at Alabama too.
Yeah. We got a message from Ihab who says, you guys do great and help me get through my workouts unless you talk soccer. We're not going to talk about soccer. Certainly there's no soccer worth being discussed right now.
Not for the Chelsea fan in the room.
I mean, not for the Liverpool fan.
Hey, tomorrow Liverpool play Real Madrid and I will probably be just a sad panda for the rest of the day after watching that game. So yeah, I'm not gonna.
West Texas Mike says, I hate when a Pitt East Carolina game steps on the start of a SC first quarter.
This is fair.
Agreed.
This is fair. Yeah.
And wrap this thing up with Kenny saying, do you think the Pac-12 is over or does it survive?
The latest I'd seen is that they are on track. They've sort of gone to the next steps to add San Diego State and SMU.
But they did put out that whole like nothing to see here thing, and then all the TV rights are crumbling.
Yeah,
it's been nice to not need to pay attention. I will say that. But if the Pac-12 does anything strong soon, it needs to merge with the Big 12.
So and the thing is,
make the Pac-16 that should have happened 13 years ago. Better late than never to jointly survive, right?
Yes, but I think that the problem is like I don't see them coming together, the two conferences,
because each think that the other one should come to them.
Yes, probably. Exactly. So I think that we've already seen the Big 12 add their people, and now we're seeing the Pac-12 add their people. And like I think both sides are going to just be too stubborn to do what they should have done in the first place. And then by then it'll be too late. Do I think the Pac-12 is going to crumble? No, I just think that they're going to cease to be a relevant football conference.
Yeah. It's all a bummer. There's a lot of,
honestly, I think we're probably like realistically, guys, we're just probably headed for a super league anyways. Like we can talk about the Pac-12 and the Big 12 and what they can do to sort of slow the roll.
Well, the super conferences are going to be here next year, basically.
Yes, but even more so in in that the Big Ten SEC sort of conglomerate will eventually it'll just move towards a super league of only the marquee teams playing each other or something like that. I don't know what it'll look like, but it feels inevitable that we're heading that way.
Yeah.
A reformation, as it were, of the FBS sort of sphere, landscape, whatever.
It's all a bummer. I still feel weird about SCB in the Big Ten. The only the good thing is, obviously, there's a lot of money involved for SC and a lot of talking points. It's going to be different. I think different will be fun in its own way, even if it's going to be sad to, leave the likes of Stanford, Cal, Oregon, Washington, teams that
we're used to.
You're used to, and that's what SC football is. So we will see how things go. We will be back next week to preview the spring camp and go position by position. Look forward to that. And again, you can join us in the Rot Squad for $4.99 a month. Help support the channel. Join our Discord and get bonus content. We're going to put out a video later this week. I think we're going to play a game. I think we're going to do a tier ranking. So come join us over there on YouTube as well. So until then, we will see ya. See ya.
See ya.